In times of trauma and adversity, we must create space for connection by sharing a story of hope. Welcome to Humans of Hope, Inspiring Stories, hosted by Kerrie Atherton. This podcast shares inspiring stories of individuals who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger, offering hope and resilience to listeners all over the world. Join Kerrie, the founder of Stories of Hope Worldwide, every week to hear these remarkable journeys and find the strength to overcome your adversity. Now, let's listen in to this week's conversation.
I'm Kerrie Atherton, and today's guest is John Killick. John is an author, but probably best well known as Australia's greatest escape artist. After escaping from maximum security prison on the roof in a helicopter that his Russian girlfriend had hijacked. But there's a lot more to his story. And welcome, John. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, Kerrie. Thanks for having me on the program. It's a pleasure.
Great to have you today. And before we start, I just want to give a trigger warning to everyone out there that we're going to be talking about sensitive topics today, such as violence, suicide, and addiction. So, John, there's a lot more to your story. You've got a big story, and it's a story marred by tragedy, a story of life on the run, a story of life inside, but also a story of how you've come out the other side. And today you're doing some amazing things, mentoring people that have experienced heartache and tragedy and trauma, and people that have been in the prison system, and also as an advocate for child abuse survivors. I'm sure nobody as a kid says, I want to go to prison when I'm older and then I want to spend my life escaping. So where did it all start for you? Can you take us back to your childhood and what led you down that path into the life of crime?
You know, I was a pretty good kid. I never got in any trouble. Didn't know anything about criminals or that sort of stuff. But I was born in the middle of a war, and I was adopted. And the family I was adopted into, my father unfortunately had a problem with alcohol, and when he did get drunk, he could get violent, and he used to cause a lot of dissension at home, threaten mum. She was a nervous wreck, and us, and sometimes couldn't sleep at night. We'd be walking the streets or sleeping under the house. That's how he had it, and it wasn't a good way to live, and I missed a lot of schooling through it and stuff like that. And then my mother committed suicide when I was 17, and I blamed him.
Yeah.
So I left home that day, and I was ill-equipped. I didn't know anything about the world. Yeah, I was a kid who grew up on comics and books, bloody cereals and stuff like that, and knew nothing about the real world. And the first night that I left home and shared a room with a guy, he's tried to rape me just about, and that was a bad experience in itself because I didn't know anything about that either. And I put a chip on my shoulder and finished up hooking up with a few guys that were a bit older than me, and taught us the ropes about shoplifting, stuff like that. And within 6 months, we were out at Long Bay Jail, and I was only 17. I shouldn't have been there, but I was, and it was really tough. Prisons were very tough in those days, and you had nothing. I learned pretty quickly. You learnt the code of ethics of the criminal world, which is virtually totally opposite to the code of ethics that we abide by outside. And I adapted to that code of ethics. And from there on, even though I had periods where I took jobs and worked and stuff, I was still bitter. Always had a chip on my shoulder, and finished up in the 60s, middle 60s, I started robbing banks. That was the start. Once you cross that line, you rob a bank, you become an outlaw, really. Police have really got the right to shoot you. And you've seen there's been a lot of bank robbers being shot dead. And it didn't bother me. I took that risk.
Can I stop you there? Why didn't it bother you?
I just felt that with me, I was a gambler. I started gambling too, and I was a heavy gambler, and I was an all or nothing sort of guy. Either I was running, and they did it 20 years later, 1986, the armed robbery squad, which formed in 66, was mainly to try and catch me. And they said I was the guy, the forerunner of it. And they said he didn't care if he got shot. I remember I robbed the bank on C Day, the day that change over currency. I thought there'd be a lot of money there, and of course there wasn't, because they got cleaned out. But that was on the 14th of February, 1966, and I robbed. That was the second bank that I robbed, and that's going back a long time now when you think about it. It's 1966. We're 34. We're 56 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's when it all started, and I just feel that I'm lucky to have survived. I chose the banks because I didn't feel that they'd foreclosed on our house when I was a kid, and I blamed them a lot for what happened to us. And it was sort of me against the banks. And it was only later, in later years, that I started working with psychologists and doing these programs called the VOTP. And they're mostly female psychologists, are very good, and I still keep in touch with them, actually. And that's 10 years later, I was keep in touch with them. They'd got it across to me that, and this is what I say to young guys, I say to everybody, even when I do interviews, that it isn't you against the bank. When you're running into a bank with a balaclava or a mask on and waving a gun, it's not you against the bank. The bank's an abstraction. It's really you against the people inside the bank. And some of those people do get traumatized. I put myself, I think, well, it could be Gloria, and she's 80. Imagine if somebody ran into a bank, she was in there, she would really be traumatized by it. And I accept that, and accept that it's not you against the bank, that it's you against the people, and that's why you get heavy sentence for bank robbers. And I explain this to people and say that you think it's a non-violent crime, but it's a violent crime because it's a violent crime. Even though you don't shoot anybody, you don't bash anybody. It's violent in its nature, and I get this across to people.
And those victims are left with the trauma and PTSD, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And there might be 10 people, nine of them are okay, they're covered okay, and that one person might. And so you've got a victim there, and the other victims may be that person's family and whatnot. So, I accept I've got a lot of victims, and I've got a lot of remorse for that. I've been trying for quite a while now to give a lot back. I've got 3 books out, another one coming out shortly, and all the money I've made from books, I've actually donated to underprivileged kids, mostly overseas, and 3 of them are autistic kids that I've helped get educated and whatnot, and they call me Papa, and it's just a great feeling, and I just see some great results.
That's great, and I can relate to the first part of your story because my dad grew up with a very violent alcoholic mother. And, there was many nights where him and his dad would have to sleep outside on the porch, and they
would
put some pants up on a wire so they could hear her coming because she'd come out with knives and try and stab them. And he grew up with just shocking trauma and PTSD as a result of that. And trauma and PTSD damages kids for their future.
It does, and you don't realise you've got to. In my time, people, they didn't know about that, so I was never diagnosed that way. But I feel it's the same now, even today. I just think that since 1788, Australia's had no idea how to handle crime and criminals. We've taken it the wrong way. When we hanged a guy in the first week, we're here for stealing some bread and a shirt. Just an example. He's 21-year-old, and you look at our record. Crime and criminals in the justice system, and it's atrocious. We used to put them in places like Hastings Division, where I was, or Grafton. As soon as they got there, you'd bash them senseless, and some of them got brain damage. And we know that systems like over in Scandinavia, they've got systems in place that work where they don't do this. They've got rehabilitation programs where it actually works, and the rehabilitation is much better, and the recidivism rates are down. But we don't get it. We're prepared to spend, and the taxpayer doesn't realise it. We're spending nearly $100,000 a year keeping prisoners inside that don't need to be there.
Yeah.
They don't need to be there. There's other things they could be doing, and they could be doing community work, all sorts of stuff. But we don't get it. So when I look at that, then I see the jails today, and I see that we've closed down a lot of mental health facilities. And look, you go into prison, I see a lot of people in there that have got mental health problems, should never have been in jail. They should not be in jail. They can't cope. They're open to be preyed upon and taken advantage of. The system doesn't know how to, the system's not equipped to handle them. And it's just, really wrong. And all we're doing is building more jails. We should be building more mental health facilities, because in today's world, there's a lot of people that need help with mental health rather than be thrown in jail. Yeah.
And I've counselled a lot of people that have been in jail. I mean, I've been in the rooms of the 12-step program for 40 years. So many of the people there that are battling addictions have ended up behind bars just through their addiction itself. And I know that gambling became a huge part of your story and was ultimately the reason that led you to robbing the banks. As most people will never be inside a prison, we don't know what that is like. So can you paint a little bit of a picture for us of what it is like inside a maximum security prison?
Well, if someone's never been in a prison, then they're just going into a totally new world, and all of a sudden your world goes from where you've got so much you can do to almost like a small room. You're confined. The worst thing, first of all, is your loss of freedom, but it's loss of choice. You can't choose to do anything. Doesn't matter what you do, you've got to ask. Even if you arrange a phone call, you have to ask and arrange it. You know you can't get out and see people, and people can't get out and get in and see you without going for a lot of rain. You can be sent anywhere in New South Wales. Like, you can be here tonight and you can be in Wellington tomorrow without any warning. And it used to happen to me a lot. Then you can go up to Grafton from there. And it's just traumatic. You get thrown into cells because you just don't get one out of cells anymore. You get thrown in a cell and with somebody you don't know, and they don't hand pick cells. I mean, I got thrown in with a lot of 18-year-olds, and we couldn't get along at all. Because 18-year-old want to play music all night, and I'd want to go to sleep or things like that. That 18-year-old needed to be in with somebody his own age, and I needed to be in with on my own, really, but certainly not someone like that. But there are a lot of predators in jail. They will take advantage of if they see that somebody can be taken advantage of. There's so much drug abuse and drugs in jail that if they think you've got money, that they'll the gangs, even gangs now, will come on you and try and force you to put money, send money to them or to their people or your people, give it to them. You can be bashed. If you're a good-looking young guy, or you're maybe not even good-looking, just a young guy, there's a chance that you'll be raped. Very good chance you could be raped. It's although I got to say, in the old days, that happened a lot. I don't think it's prevalent now because sex is more open now. It's not illegal, and there are gays come into the system and they sell their favours, etc., like that, or it's more open. Where when I was there, if you got caught having sex with another guy, you'd be taken outside court and you might get 7 years for it. So, but what happened then was that they'd put a young guy in a cell with two other guys, and they'd rape him overnight, and he wouldn't say anything because he'd be classed straight away as a dog by all the other prisoners and put on protection. He'd be too ashamed, and that's still happening now. All these kids that went to boys' homes, like Derek,
do a lot of work with these guys. Yeah, you're mentoring them today.
Yeah, well, I don't so much do it today as I still work with a company, but the book I've written about a guy called Russell Manser, he went to a place called Durrock. He was only 15, and he was raped on the first night he was there, and so were a lot of his mates. And he realised what was happening, and it traumatised him. Then he went to Long Bay and was thrown in with all the pedophiles. And he was 17. He should not have been put in there. Now, what happened is that they turn to drugs. All these kids that get molested and stuff, they turn to drugs as an escapism. Sometimes they get forced to take drugs anyway, but he became a drug addict.
In jail?
Yeah. And when he got out, he started robbing banks and doing things like that. Spent 23 years in jail. But he formed a company to help other people like himself. And that company called The Voice Survivor has become a successful business. And I've written a book about it, which is coming out in a few weeks. And it tells the story. It's one of the few success stories that come out of this sort of thing. And he's helping others. Now, those others, they're too ashamed to come out. And I've seen it when I've done these vow to me. They don't want to admit it. I've seen hard men break down and say, I went to the Royal Commission and spoke about something that happened 30 years ago to him, and they break down and cry. And they held a pen up because men just don't tell tales and talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was the way I was brought up. But you do, and when they do tell their story and they realise that none of it was their fault, what they're doing, they're handing the guilt back to the perpetrator. And they're also naming the perpetrator who, if he's still alive, a lot of them, they have to go to court. And they also get compensated and an apology, which I think is very important, an apology from the government itself, which I think is important for the government to say, we're in the wrong. This should never happen.
100%.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know, I mean, I was the victim of a couple of sexual assaults, and one when I was 17. I didn't tell anyone because there was no justice when I was younger.
No.
And I think that's the hardest thing for me is knowing that there was never any justice. Important for closure.
Yeah, that's right. You know, and I've described that in the book because in the Durrock where they were, and it's been accepted by the Royal Commission. Anyone who went to Durrock, which is about rape and sexual assault, and the whole team of so-called officers were involved in it. Now, there's no one you could turn to because they're all in on it. Now, the authorities knew it got out. You can't hush these things up. The authorities knew, but they just kept the lid on it. They just didn't want to be. It's like the church covering up. It was more important to protect the name of the church than to protect the victims. Now, we know that that's come out. But Russell went, and a few other people that I know were there, and I've talked to them. They went to women that were, some of the women who worked there, they were cleaners and did laundry and that, and they told them. And they looked at them as if they were dirt and told them to go away. They report them. They didn't want to know about it. So, you know, I know one guy ran away and told the cops. They just took him back to the home. And
I'm glad that we can shine a light on that today and talk loudly about it.
It's a good thing, Kerrie. Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, and I can imagine how you must have felt at 17. It's terrible, you know.
Yeah, thank you, John. Let's talk about what led you to make the Great Escape. Were you the ultimate risk taker, or obviously it's horrendous in jail and nobody wants to live their life in there? I'm sure every prisoner dreams of escaping, but hardly anyone does escape, but you did.
Well, if I could have walked out through the gate, I would have done it that way around.
Sure, everyone would have. Yeah.
You know, I had a history of escaping. I had escaped up in Queensland. A girl slipped me a toy gun up there, and I held up a couple of the screws who had real guns and got away. I was handcuffed, and I was out for about 12 months. And I was involved in a couple of other escapes and down in Pentridge and whatnot. And I had huge security on me when I was arrested. I was classed extreme high risk, and I had a special squad used to take me to court, the hospital, and stuff like that. They weren't going to give me any chance to escape, and so I knew. And when Lucy used to come out, she'd say, "I got to get you out." I'd say, "It's impossible. I've got such huge security on me." But then I noticed all these helicopters coming over, and because we were next door to the Olympic Stadium, the Olympic Games were coming on the following year in 2000. And I realised that lots of people were coming over and to have a look at the Olympic site, the tours. And I looked at the guards. They weren't taking any notice of these helicopters flying over. Yeah, you go to any other jail, you go to Cessnock, go to Lithgow, Goulburn. If a helicopter comes over, it's a very unusual occurrence, and everybody takes note. And then the screws are on guard because everybody knows every prisoner born dreams about getting out of a helicopter. So they're aware of it in all the other jails. But they drop their guard here. When you're seeing like 10 an hour come over, you just know it. And I saw there's a huge advantage here. We could get out in a helicopter. So I said to Lucy, we can get out, but you're going to hijack a helicopter.
How long had you been in contact with Lucy?
Oh, since 95, nearly 4 years.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And, we were pretty close. So they reckon she was there the day I got arrested on the bank robbery. She wasn't, but they still reckon she was. And they reckon, because they never got the money, and they reckon she got the money from the bank robbery to set her in up. She was never charged with that because they could never prove it. But she was charged for busting me out, though, and she never should have been convicted on that. They didn't really have any evidence, but that was a farcical trial, and she was convicted by the media the first day, 6 o'clock that night. She was all over the media, her face and everything. Her husband saying she'd done it and all that. I mean, it was just straight out unbelievable that the media could get away and do that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Said to Lucy, "Let's do this."
Well, I told her to go and have a trial run, and she did. And when she came back, she was pretty excited and said, "Look, yeah, it can be done." But there were a few things I didn't know about helicopters. They've got silent alarms called transponders through the authorities. I didn't know about that. This is what I mean. Sometimes I think it was fate for me to get away like that because I think it was just fate that someone had to do it. And they brought this con man, this guy, Bennett. They brought him over from Scotland. There were 20 wings, and I was in one of the wings, 16, Goldsmith. And they brought him in. They put him in my wing, this 5% chance that he'd go into my wing, this helicopter pilot. And then I got him into my cell. So the odds are getting rather astronomical, you know. And then I was talking to him, and he knew who I was, and he started talking about the bank, and I said, "Oh yeah, I got plenty of money from the bank, putting away." And he said, "I can get you out." He said, "When I get out," he said, "get loose, give me 10,000." And I said, "How are you going to do that?" And he described me how he'd do it. And he had all these helicopter books and all that. And I looked, I went through, and I said, "What's a transponder?" And he told me what that was, and what heights would you have to be, and what about the earphones? Oh, you'd take them off the pilot and all that. And in the end, I knew just about everything there was to know. Even today, I thank the corrective services for putting him in my cell, because it did help a lot, you know.
It's like on a silver platter, wasn't it? Basically,
That's one of the reasons that they're so pissed off with me, and they still won't let me go interstate. They just won't give. They let other people go overseas and pro. They won't even let. I tried to go to play in a chess tournament in Canberra, and they stopped it. I paid to get in there, and I had a hotel booked in Queensland, so I come back at night and stay there. And no, you can't do it. I mean, yeah,
you interviewed on Mike Willisey was it 2021?
No, that was we did that in 2014 before I went back.
Oh, it's come up on the internet as 2021, and I was thinking, I don't think that's right, but I did see you being interviewed by Mike Willisey.
Yeah,
had an ankle bracelet on.
Yeah, that's right. They
had the ankle bracelet on today?
No, we took them to court over that, but no, I got it off. But they tried everything they could, all that stuff. It was, you know, I used to have to write 10 days in advance where I was going to be every minute, and I'd go to movies with Gloria, and they'd ring me up and say that we've lost the signal. You have to go outside, and make sure I miss 10, 15 minutes of the movie. You know, they'd do it to us. I mean, you know, they'd wake me up in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, say, "Where are you? Where are you?" So I'm home. Go and answer your phone, you know. And they knew where I was. I mean, it was just nasty.
Yeah,
and, they've never forgiven me, and it's not my fault they put the helicopter pilot in my song. You know, I mean, you know.
Well, that's right. When you escaped that time, how long were you out of jail for?
We're only out 7 weeks. We were lucky to be out 7 hours. The heat was
I know, 7 weeks. Wow.
We're on every newspaper, every radio thing. People.
I know, I saw.
Yeah, they were getting 300 calls a day. I was here, he said they were stopping trains, boats. We were seen over in Cuba, seen in the church in bloody Brazil. I mean, you know, it's just ridiculous how hot it was.
At the time, did you feel invincible, or did you know you?
No. I had it set up. I knew someone to do false passports, and that was the whole thing. And but he was in jail, but his wife had the contacts. But when I rang his wife, they'd already been there. They had her covered too, and I knew we were on our own there. Everybody we knew they had covered. No, it was a mistake. I've always admitted it was a mistake. We got shot 3 times. We were lucky they didn't bring us down. And I knew, I'd read about the Geneva Convention, and knew under the Geneva Convention, they're not allowed to shoot at aircraft over jail because it could well be a hostage situation. But they just ignored that, and they just shot us, and they hit the chocolates 3 times, went about within half an inch of bringing us down. You know, yeah. That's another reason I got such a heavy sentence, because I got 28 years for it, you know.
How long had you left of your current sentence before you escaped in the helicopter?
Oh no, I always escape before I get sentenced. You know, I always try and.
But you were in jail.
No, I didn't have any time because I hadn't been sentenced. I was refused. I had to go to trial on a couple of bank robberies. Yeah.
And so, how old are you now?
I think I'm 80. I have to check it. No, I was 80. Yeah, yesterday I was 80. I think I'm still 80.
And how many years of those have you been inside?
30.
Wow.
So the good news is I've had 50 out, which is more than most people. But when people say that to me, I say, well, I've had 50 out. How many you had out? 36. Well, yeah. I'm 14 ahead of you. You know?
So when did you actually get out of jail? What year?
I was supposed to get out in 2013, but the commissioner kept me in as long as he could. If he had his way, I'd still be in jail. We had to go to the Supreme Court to get out. Would you believe it? I got out in 2014. Then they grabbed me and wanted to take me back on a 30-year-old charge for not reporting on bail and on parole. And we fought that for 3 months. I had ankle bracelets on it. Then I lost it. The Judge Simpson Justice Simpson, she said she felt it was very close to an abusive process, but it had to be settled up in Queensland. Well, so I flew myself back up there and handed myself in. And I still remember that day. It was because when it was that night they were having a state of origin. They'd been thrashing us Queensland, but we'd actually won the series. You wouldn't believe I bumped into Laurie Daly a few days before in the city. And I told him, look, I'm going up to Queensland. What do you reckon? He said, wear a bloody scarf and just show him who you are. So I did. I wore this scarf and all the media were following me. And I remember walking across, I seen this little kid wearing a blue scarf. I couldn't believe he was about 11. He waving, so he didn't realise I'm going to jail. It's waving to him.
Yeah.
And so the media played that up a bit because it was my way of saying, fuck Queensland, they brought me up here for something 30 years later. And they made me do 6 months. But
wow.
Yeah, New South Wales got beat that night. It's that wasn't very good. But we won the series. We hadn't won many series that stage. But I did 6 months. And when I came back, they met me at the airport and rushed me through and whacked the bloody the ankle braces back on and said you're still under. I said no. So I took it to court and I finished up winning it. And they took it all off. So you can see that they were never happy with me. They weren't happy. They made me do that extra 12 months. Then they grabbed me and took me up to Wood. They put me in the toughest jail they could in Queensland. Made me sleep on the floor half the time, And I realised that they're never going to get over it. They feel I'm embarrassing. And they shouldn't feel like that because it's really nothing to do with us and them. I mean, it was a thing that happened. Sooner or later, somebody was going to get out in a helicopter. It just happened to be me. But sooner or later, somebody's going to do it. Yeah.
And in the interview, I saw that after your mum passed away, that you told yourself, and there was an inner vow that you made that it was you against the world from that.
Yeah. Well, that's changed now. It was that way for about 50 years. That's changed now. And I've been doing a lot of good now since in the last 6-7 years. I haven't even got much money because I have given it away, and but I'm helping the right people. And
that's great.
Yeah, it is, and I feel good about it. And these people that I help, you put yourself in their shoes. And as you get older, you're able to do that. But when I ran into banks, I didn't think about stuff like that. I was going to get that money. It was me, and everybody was going to get it. I was going to get killed. And the people in there, I knew I wasn't going to hurt them, so they had nothing to worry about it because I didn't take into account the fact that some of those people were probably getting traumatized.
Yeah. For you, it was just a whole journey of survival.
Yeah. Well, it's also gambling. You'd go to the race or the casino and lose a large amount of money, and sometimes you'd see a jockey on your horse and he'd miss the start, deliver and lose. You had 2,000 on it, and you knew you got ripped off. And I'd try and justify that to myself. Look, I've been ripped off, so it's an illusion. You delude yourself.
That's right. Yeah, and addictions. I work as an addictions counsellor. I have for many years.
Well, you know all about it, Jen. I think it's worse in drugs in some way because drugs, you can only spend so much money on drugs. But gambling, if you've got $1 million, you're going to lose in a day. And some people have. There was a bank manager over in West Australia, a bank manager, mind you, who lost $6 million to a corporate bookie. And the judge said, when sentencing him, he gave him about 6 years. He said, if I had my way, the corporate bookmaker would be standing right beside you in this dock because they would have known you're a bank manager. Where the hell do you get $6 million to bet? You know what I mean?
Yeah. John, what would you say to anybody out there who has done things that they feel like they can never come back from? Can you speak to the topic of shame for me? Because it's shame is a silent killer in itself.
Well, it is. Look, I don't think there's any situation you can't get back from. There's been some incredible comebacks in life. People you never would have thought. Russell Manson's story is a minute of one chance, I think, that he's only come back. He tried to commit suicide. He really was a bad drug addict and is in jail for 23 years. You just wouldn't think he'd come back, yet he's got a great life today. So I think when you look at shame, there's two lots of shame. There's the first shame where stuff's been inflicted on you and it's not your fault, but you still feel bad about it. And I think that sort of shame, if you work with the right people, you can overcome that for sure. There's no doubt you can overcome that because you at the bottom, it just needs to be got across to you that it wasn't your fault that it happened. But there's other sorts of shame. We've done things, and I think everybody's done things that we shouldn't have done. We look back, we're human beings. renowned for it. And, I don't know anyone. Really, I don't know anyone that hasn't done things. If you get talking to them, they'll admit they've done things they're ashamed of. That part of life's part of evolving, I think, into a better person. And I just think that what's done is done. You can make up for it. You can make up for it. You can do good things and with your life.
But just before we wrap up, I've got 2 questions for you. What's been your greatest day?
Greatest day.
Yeah.
I think the day my son was born.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm really proud of him. He's gone over to China now. He's married to a Chinese lady, and he's worked over there. He went over there. He went to university and did the wrong subjects, and so he just went over there and become a teacher of English. Didn't have the qualifications. Now he's been doing it for 23 years. He's fluently learnt the language. Knows about 4 other languages, and he's just done so great. He's done things that I couldn't have done. I could not have done things like that,
Oh, that's great. And what's been your greatest light bulb moment?
The greatest light bulb moment, I think, was that I think thinking of others rather than yourself brings greater joy. You know that? I really believe that.
Love that.
Yeah. I mean, rather than I was selfish, no doubt about it. When I was younger, I was selfish. When I said it was me against the world, I did become selfish. And, but now I look at the things I can do with any money I make and who I can help. And I just think it gives me a lot of joy to see the pleasure it brings because you're helping a lot of people. And they generally appreciate it. They appreciate you. They know that what you're doing for them,
Yeah, that's so good. And lastly, what's your message for the world?
Well, my message for the world, I wish we could get it across to the ones that lead the world that the worst thing in the world is war. There's certainly, I've always hated war, and it's never produced any good that I can see. But my message to the world is just care about others, and I think that some people lose the ability to be able to emphasise. If we can have that empathy to be able to put ourselves in that, and I didn't have it when I was younger. I didn't have it, but I've gained it, and I realise it's a quality that I've got. And to be able to stop and think, put yourself in another person's shoes. If something happens to them, how are you going to feel about it? Because a lot of actions, people quite often callous. They'll be in a relationship, and instead of breaking up, they'll just send a message, look, it's over, or something like just callously do things like that. And,
I know, it's the culture today. Yeah, we're just ghosting people. Yeah.
That's right. And, I think we've got to think more about how we can sort of help people more and emphasise with them a bit more than what we do. Yeah.
Well, John, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and the world's a greater place with you in it. You're doing amazing things today, helping so many people, and I've loved chatting with you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Kerrie. And took a while to get me to the post, but we made it. We made it, and you're doing great stuff. I just think that when you look back at your background, what you're doing now, you're doing great stuff. And I've heard so much about you that I'm glad I met you, and we'll meet again for sure. When we do get a chance, we'll have some coffee and sit down and have a chat, okay?
Oh, that'll be great. Thank you, John, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Humans of Hope Inspiring Stories with Kerrie Atherton. If this conversation helped you, please consider sharing the podcast with a friend or leave a rating and review on your podcast player. Thank you to Matthew Bliss for podcast production and consultation, and to Kintsugi Heroes for making this podcast possible. If you'd like to find out more about Kerrie Atherton, head to storiesofhope.com.au, where you can purchase her books or find out where her next event is taking place. Check the show notes for links and information about our guest in this episode. And remember, you don't have to walk your path alone.